I'm in Los Angeles, and you can call me June. I'm wearing a blue shirt and black glasses, and I'm in my office, and you can see I cannot keep a clean desk for the life of me ever, although I've tried to hide some of it. So you can see a little mess. Pronouns are he, are she, her, whatever. And let's see. Oh, I have a COVID gray hair, which reminds me that I'm older than I think I am. You know what? I have so many mentors that I can't name them all. I like to, I have mentors that are mentors for a moment and mentors for years, and I don't know how to pick favorites.
For sure.
I just
I totally get that.
kind of people's mentors. So,
well, that's better. I mean, to have more than less is way better. Alrighty. So you've done your introduction, and are you feeling ready to start the interview now?
Ready.
Okay, good. Alrighty. Question number 1. How did you meet Ed Roberts?
Well, I'm not sure I remember the first time, but I was really involved in, the independent living movement starting in the mid 70s. And that's when we got we were one of the original 10 independent living centers in LA. And so in that space and in that time, we would often get together, and we would, I guess, somehow Ed was part of that mix from time to time, and just kind of happened that way. I can't remember the exact time or place,
Absolutely. In the beginning of the movement, you guys were hustling and bustling, and you kind of all met each other. I'm sure there was a lot of meeting and talking.
Yeah, we were hustling. We had some good stories back then.
Oh, yes. I mean, this is the reason we're doing this, is because you guys have such incredible stories, and you have created a world for us youth.
One of my favorite stories, I don't know what happened to Ed around this time, but when we were starting these centers in California, the Department of Rehab, I don't think they knew what to make of us.
Mm-hmm.
Very nervous. And so they told us that they were going to put one of their staff in each of our centers as a participant observer. And we said, oh, yeah? You think he's going to do that, huh? No way is that going to happen. No way.
Really?
Yeah, we pushed back, and it did not happen. But we were off and running at that point, because we were new, and they had no idea what to make of us, and they weren't quite fond of the concept, and so there were some battles.
For sure. All right. Question number 2. What role did Ed play in your life, and how did he influence you?
Well, you know what? Because we were my favorite story is, because we were the 10 original centers, Ed really made that happen. He was at the Department of Rehab, and there was innovation and expansion money available from the federal government. And, all I remember of the story is that Ed was going to use that money to help us get these centers off the ground. And the governor at that time, I think was Jerry Brown's father, governor said that you can't do that. You can't use the money for that.
Wow.
And Ed said something like, watch me. And I mean, so we owe him a lot, and he said, I said, we can do this, and we are
Yes.
going to do this. And, that's, I don't know all the inner workings of what went on up there. It happened. He did.
Yeah, that's amazing that he was like, no, it is gonna happen. Watch me do it.
Yeah.
And he made it so much possible for so many. And so that's just goes to show how empowering or how powerful the disability community is. Like we can do anything.
This is a whole new concept, and he understood it completely because he was part of the Rolling Quads in Berkeley. And so he knew what this meant. He knew what it meant to put people with disabilities in charge of a disability-led organization. And so, we were the first 10 in California, and there were a few others around the country that were starting at the same time. So it's very cool.
Yeah, and can you what do you mean by rolling quads?
Well, so let's see. I came out here from New York to go to graduate school and escape from the weather. That was very oppressive. And so a friend of mine, Neil Jacobson, said, there's something going on in Berkeley, and we should go up and see what's all happening up there. And I'm just remembering this for the first time. So I was in grad school, and we had an internship, and they would not let me leave. They would not let me go. We were going to do a long weekend and drive up there and drive back. And so basically I lied and just said I was sick. And go to work. So I drove up to Berkeley, and that's where I, originally met all of these people, these with disabilities. A lot of them were quads.
Right.
And this apartment building that I think had more roaches in it than people. But
disgusting.
Yeah, and they, that was the original group that, I think they were backing up. I think Ed had finally, done everything he could to get into school in Berkeley. So, I mean, it was a royal fight because I remember the president of the school said something like, we don't do cripples. Well, we try cripples and they don't work. And so, but he did relent. And apparently all these guys who were quads were living, they couldn't live in dorms. They were living in a hospital, I think, during the evening, and were going to school during the day. And, they felt their freedom, and going back to a very confining, controlled environment at night was like the pits. And so they just said, we got to get out of here and organize and do something better. This is not what we're going to do with our lives.
Yeah.
So they organized and called themselves the Rolling Quads. That's where I encountered them in this apartment building. They were talking about independent living and starting a Center for Independent Living. And I thought, how cool is this? We could do this. And because I was also working at a rehab hospital at the time. I had an internship there, and I was seeing people, being forced into nursing homes all the time because they had nowhere to go. That was pretty pathetic. And I thought, well, this would be the freeing factor that would help people really, this concept that Ed and the other guys were putting together. We needed to, water this and foster it and make it work. And so that's where I encountered Ed also, and the rest of that rolling quad game. They called themselves the Rolling Quads.
That's so awesome, though. I have heard so many stories about Berkeley. I don't know if you know Peter Mendoza, but just life in Berkeley, you know, when the IL movement was happening, and I would give so much to like be able to go and experience it and be there. I mean, Peter says it was like the, you know, people in wheelchairs like rule the city, and they just, people with disabilities are all around, and what a great community. That's so
It was so cool. You know, when I went up there and I saw this, I saw the campus and I saw the guys, and I thought, how come I didn't go to school here? I didn't even know about it, or I would have been there in a flash.
yeah. For sure. I totally get that. I feel that way kind of too. I go to Santa Barbara and I'm like, maybe I should have gone to Berkeley.
Well, yes, yeah. So that's how I got connected with this and Ed, and you know what he did, and we would, you know, get together now and then. And as we grew and as the movement grew, you know, it became more and more popular because, you know, the 60-minute video you saw, and
Yeah.
people worship that. And you know, we in California, my favorite story about Ed is we in California, you know, we treated him like just another brother, you know,
Right.
nothing special. And so we'd go to independent living conferences all over the country, and they would always have Ed as a speaker. And so, you know, in the beginning, it was great and very impressive, and he was very articulate. But, you know, it got kind of old for us from California. So, I mean, this went on for years. And so, well, what happened is this, you know, in the conferences, I would find that we were all in the back of the room because we knew Ed was going to speak. And, you know, it was like, we could probably tell you the speech word for word. We just kind of sneak out of the room at the point and just, you know, have our own little huddle outside the ballroom or whatever. Because how many times could we hear this, you know? That's my favorite story about Ed. You know, it's like, okay, you might think he's special, but he's just Ed. I mean, what's the deal here?
Yes, that's why it's so great to interview you and interview people who knew him, because it's like he is put on this, you know, he did such good work that he's put on a pedestal a lot of the time just because of how powerful he is. But you remind us that he is human and he is just another one of us. And, you know, he just was trying to better our lives. And so yeah, but it must be it must have been so refreshing for him to come back to you guys and know he was treated, you know, just as another brother, you know, not as a famous guy or like this really big activist who's like, can I get your autograph?
Well, I hope so. I don't think he ever saw us sneaking out of the room. But
I feel like you guys didn't do that. You probably just joked around with him, treated him like one of yourselves.
yeah,
I
yeah.
love that.
Well, when you get done with your stuff, come on out and we'll have some fun. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, then this will be such a good answer to the next question because you have insight. Describe your impression of Ed? What was his personality like?
Oh, I think he was, you know, fun loving. He liked to have a good time. He also liked to be in the limelight, and he liked to, you know, get away with saying things, and he did get away with things. And I think he loved that stuff. So, you know, he could be very down to earth, and we could have a very serious conversation, or he could be a performer.
Right.
And you know, but you know, it's like anyone that's held on a pedestal, you know, you do make it work. I mean, when I ran the center in LA for quite a while. And when we opened up, when we broke ground, it was kind of a renovation. So when we knocked down walls, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony. Invited
Mhm.
Ed down for that. People loved it. It's like, oh, how did you get him to come here? Oh, it was really hard. I had to do, it was really hard. So, you kind of make it work for you too. Okay, fine. You're not going to be really impressed, and I'm going to be the hero. That's good.
Alrighty. What wisdom did Ed pass on to you?
Hmm. Well, I don't know if it was more of more of kind of connecting the dots with what I said before, which is, don't let people tell you what you can't do. Do what you think is right and push back.
Yeah.
Don't let people set up these artificial barriers. And I think Ed was good at shocking people and trying to get through the implicit biases around disability. And I think you see that in that little 60 Minutes tape too. Like, I haven't watched it so long, but I think that comes through in that video with, who was that? Morley Schaefer who did that, or yeah. I think he kind of blew him away. Ed did
The
in the video.
the interviewer, you think Ed kind of blew him away?
Yeah.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
I totally agree. And it was so, I think it was such an empowering thing because it showed like this community, our community of people who are, so much of us are like Ed. Like we have, we speak our truth and we're not scared to be humans and be weird and, have sex, do drugs,
Yeah.
and it makes people, people who don't realize that we are human and we do all these things. I think it makes them a little uncomfortable, but it has to happen. And
a lot uncomfortable. I mean, you could see, when the sexuality came up, you could see. I think as in more just kind of,
yeah.
Oh my God. I love how, that's another lesson of wisdom, which just, cut through that implicit bias and the ableism and really, talk turkey to people. And,
Yeah. Just hearing stories.
Don't let them get away with stereotyping you.
Mm-hmm.
And, if I want to do this, if I want to travel, go places, I did it. He wasn't going to be stopped. So those kind of wisdom, that's, those are good messages that I think you definitely get from Ed. Like, you're not
We
going
get it from,
you're not
we absolutely get it from all of the people who came before us, who were at Berkeley and Berkeley's, in the town halls, not afraid to sit in and, block the streets of San Francisco or Berkeley, and it goes to show like those barriers are just, they're built by other people and we can tear them down and we can show, and you guys really inspired generations past and our generations continuing. All right.
You guys have to build on what we did, because as you well know, there's a whole lot more to do. We ain't done.
Oh yes, no, for sure. Well, that's the thing is like I so many people are like, wow, they've done so much work, and it's like we can't stop. They've only just given us opportunity to continue, and you've shown us these beautiful examples of like, use your voice. Do not be afraid to use your voice. Say things. Go against that, the hierarchy. You have rights, and disability rights are human rights. And so for sure, there's no stopping now. We are on that uphill climb towards more.
And there's room for everyone. Some people have to barricade themselves on the buses, and or historically, and now, and everything else we're trying to accomplish. But it takes a village to get this done, because we need the suits, walking around Washington D.C., rolling around and making the regulatory changes and the legislative changes, and doing all of that hard work, and demonstrating is just part of the hard work. It's all that under the water, the iceberg stuff underneath, that unglamorous stuff that has to get done, the hard work.
For sure. 100%. Okay. How did Ed advocate for himself?
I think it just came naturally. People, sometimes people with disabilities like that can get away with a lot of things because people don't know what to think.
Right.
So, in some ways you could use the intimidation factor to get away with a lot of things that other people could not get away with. And he used that to his benefit.
Right.
What do you mean I can't go there? Watch me. I'm going there. So,
that's so great. So he just, wasn't afraid to speak what he needed and was straightforward with his needs.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Yeah. And do you think because of how forward he was with his needs and, honest, and he talked about the elephant in the room before the elephant even entered the room. Do you think people were more inclined to help him and, and meet his needs, or they were more reserved because of how strong he came?
They were probably both, depending on who the person was and their personality.
Right.
Both. Yeah.
Both. Yeah.
Hard to know.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like you can't make a generalization because he experienced so many different people. Okay.
But remember, he can read people. He can read. We all read.
Right.
People.
Right.
We know how to do that.
Yeah, exactly. For sure. No, I just wonder because it's like there's still that barrier of people being like wanting to like step over your own boundaries, and like I wonder if it, when you come off stronger, like I find if I like acknowledge my difference walking in the room before anybody else, that it is better. But so I don't know, that's just my experience. But I think it's safe to say it's just you can't make a generalization.
Yeah, it's what works in the moment and the time and the people. It's always a different dynamic mix. You have these calls as you go.
Absolutely.
But he was very good at that.
Yeah, he seems like it. He seems like he knew how to work a room. And just
yes. Yeah. He's been around many rooms.
He did. Alrighty. Why did Ed choose to be an advocate that you know of?
I can't read his mind, but in general, when you live with a disability, you make those choices about, it's a survival skill.
Right.
And whether it's self-advocacy or systems advocacy, it's a survival skill. It's he had things he wanted to do. So it was not a choice.
Right.
You had to be an advocate to get what you wanted, to get what you wanted to be, to achieve things.
When he began, when you began creating and working in the IL movement, did he specifically have goal, like, or did he speak of something that really resonated in him for this passion of starting the IL movement and offering services and, better lives for people with disability?
I think it's hard to sort out all these years later
Right.
that and what was us and what was the movement. But,
Right.
We all embraced the fact that life could be better and that we were going to make it better by putting together, better systems that will allow people to enhance their independence and their health and, do what they wanted to do and in the way they wanted to do it. Self-determination, risk-taking, and, I don't know how much he, it all kind of blends together all these years.
Right.
But we were all headed in the right direction. We were all articulating it a little differently.
Right.
And, I kind of stopped listening to him when I was out of the room, but I knew what he believed in. So,
but it's like, you all have to have different perspectives to make it work the best.
Right.
So a team works the best when everybody brings something. And, when you don't, bring it back to the pedestal and like leadership. It's like a community. It can't be one person because the person will fall off the pedestal and they don't have every idea under the sun, and it takes a team effort. And I think you guys together made such a strong movement, and no worries on remembering all the details. We just enjoy any stories.
I think in reflecting back though, I think we've always had to balance the advocacy with the services that centers were offering.
Mm-hmm.
And that balance was often a struggle and hard to achieve for to keep the advocacy at the forefront. And knowing that most of the money that we were getting was for services, but not to let go of the systemic change we needed to achieve. And that's still a battle today.
For sure.
So,
awesome. All right. The second to last is these are like kind of aiming at the youth, which is our audience. What should youth be advocating for to carry on Ed's legacy?
Oh, well, there's so much to choose from. There's so many things that could make life better that I think you all had to pick something that you're passionate about and go with it, and know that it's not going to be something you do this year and then change for next year. You're going to be in it for the long haul. So whatever you pick to really dive deep in, make sure you're passionate about it, because that'll give you the energy to keep going. Because otherwise you might drop out because you're really not that interested in an issue. So be very careful and selective about the issue you pick, and then stay with it. But if it's not right, pick a new one. But don't just pick one this week and one next week.
Right.
Make a difference. You have to stay with it big time.
Yes.
For the long haul.
Yes.
Long haul issue.
That is such good advice of the passion. Find something you're passionate about, because this is the long, you said it. We're still climbing, we're still fighting, and there's a long fight ahead. And so you have to pick something you're sustainable, you can sustain and come back to, and look at it in all these different directions. And
pick your partners and allies, and teams and,
Yeah.
decide if you're going to be a leader or a follower. It's okay, but
Yes.
we need both to get things done.
Yes. Absolutely. All right. Your last question. Thank you so much, June. What would be Ed's dream for the disability community today?
I think his dream would be that all of these centers that he helped create continue to play a major role in making the systems better and not letting go of the advocacy part.
Mhm.
That may be a projection. Some people have said, the centers, independent living centers, are in the business to be out of business.
Wow.
And I don't believe that, because the goals and the challenges will always evolve. So what was acceptable today will be unacceptable tomorrow, because we have a higher standard. So I think, maybe I'm transferring what I want into what he thinks. What I
No.
think he would think,
Mhm.
have to keep raising the bar, raising the standards, and that's not going to stop. And we can't just be centers who only provide service, although that's important. We have to keep the other part of what we do to balance the really changing big systems.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like that was I feel like that was perfect. I mean, his dream, you talked about it, the balance of advocacy and the services that the ILCs offer. It's so hard to balance, but we can't stop the advocacy. And that was the end of our interview. And it looks like you have some other people waiting for
I
you.
am being told by the chef who wants to have dinner.
Well, thank you, June. I do not want to keep you any longer. Truly, truly, thank you so much for doing this interview. It was such a pleasure to interview you.